I had taken a little break from doing this, so I'm going to start back again with the top 10, or my personal top 10 shooting guards of all time. At number 10, I have Pistol Pete Maravich. Pistol Pete Maravich will probably rank a little higher on my all-time list had he had a more consistent and longer career. I don't usually quote Bill Walton a lot, but I do remember Bill Walton once saying, back in the 90s, I was watching a playoff game, and he was saying that he thought that in order to be a Hall of Famer, that you should play in a minimum of 700 games. And I believe Pistol Pete Maravich played, if I read correctly in the research I just did, 658 games. Which is a plentiful amount of games, but I kind of take longevity. I know sometimes luck is involved with that, Some players just seem to last longer. Their bodies hold up much longer than other guys. Some guys seem to be prone to injury, like a Pete Maravich or a Jerry West or a Grant Hill, although later on in his career that seemed to go away. But still, the impact that Pete Maravich had on the game. Pete Maravich was one of the greatest showmen of all time. And he was a gifted playmaker, a scorer, and perhaps the greatest ball handler we've ever witnessed in the history of the game. John Havlicek, one of the greatest small forwards the game has ever seen, has said in the past that he thought Pete Maravich was the best ball handler that he ever witnessed. His father, Press Maravich, was a former player himself in the NBA, and he went on to become a famed collegiate coach. He worked with his son Pete on the game of basketball since Pete was only 7 years old. Pete marveled people that he knew, family and friends, with his exceptional ball handling ability at a very young age. Maravich worked hard on his game, spending hours working on the fundamentals of basketball. Some even think that in hindsight, Pete Maravich may have suffered from a mild form of obsessive-compulsive disorder. It was in high school where Pete Maravich earned the nickname the Pistol, due to the way he shot the ball from his side, as if he were holding a gun. After a stint with Edwards Military Institute, it was at LSU that Pete Maravich had the most prolific offensive production in collegiate history. Maravich averaged over 44 points per game in his 3 years there. It was later calculated by former head coach Dale Brown that had the collegiate three-point line of 19 feet 9 inches been created during Maravich's time, he would have averaged about 57 points per game. During his collegiate career, Maravich was a three-time consensus NCAA All-American First Team player. 3 times he was the SEC Player of the Year. He was the Associated Press College Player of the Year in 1970, the Sporting News Player of the Year in 1970, and the Naismith College Player of the Year, also in 1970. That same year, the 6'5", 200-pound Maravich was selected the 3rd pick of the NBA draft to the Atlanta Hawks. In many ways, Maravich's flashy game would have fit today's game perfectly. He was a player ahead of his time. In Maravich's playing time, in his years of play, I should say, some of his flashiness and freestyle on the court was held back by his coach's philosophy and system, and the more conservative style of play back in that era. Maravich averaged over 23 points per game still his first year, and he earned all rookie honors. After a sophomore slump for the next few seasons, Maravich was amongst the leaders in scoring, but his teams had a tendency to struggle to make the playoffs. Well, it wasn't all his fault. A gifted passer as well as scorer and ball handler, he dished out nearly 7 assists per game during the 1972-73 season. When the New Orleans Jazz franchise started in 1974, they were looking for a flashy, charismatic player who could draw attention and revenue to the Big Easy. Pete Maravich, having been a local legend with LSU, was their guy. In their first season together, both Maravich and the Jazz struggled mightily, with the Jazz only winning 23 games and Pete Maravich only averaging 21 points and shooting under 42% from the field. Things slowly began to come together, put some talent around Maravich, and by the 1976-77 season, Pete Maravich was at his peak as an NBA player. He won his first and only scoring title at 31.1 points per game. And on February 25th, 1977, Maravich scored a career-high 68 points against the New York Knicks. At the time, only two men, Wilt Chamberlain and Elgin Baylor, had scored more points in a single game.
The margin in half, the Jazz once led it by 33.
Get that shot up in the air.
A jumper by the pistol.
Well, Knicks have tried everything and everybody on the pistol, and nobody's worked out too well.
He's still shooting. 54 and still counting. 102-87. The pistol firing for 56. He's got it. Here they go, and he gets a layup to hit 60. Here's the pistol. Sees some daylight, goes in, lay it up. Good. No, a charge. A charging foul on Pistol. And that is his fifth personal foul.
Hard on defense that time. He was fronting Pistol Pete, and that ball came in and went off of Dean's hands, they call. They're looking for him.
Aaron James inside.
Dean has the task of trying to contain him, and that's a hard job to do.
Here he uses the pick and scores again. The Pistol with 66 right now. Here's a basket for him if he can convert. 68 for Maravich. And a steal. Look at him fight for this ball. The Pistol's doing it all. A great ball. Goes on a drive. He's out of the ball game. They called him with an offensive foul, and that will allow him out of the.
Unfortunately, soon after that season, Maravich's injuries, in particular his knee injuries, got worse, progressively so. And by 1979, with the team having moved to Utah and building around future star Adrian Dantley, Pete Maravich signed with the Boston Celtics as a scoring weapon off the bench. And he, for the first time in a long time, he became part of a prolonged playoff run for a team. But unfortunately, that Boston Celtics team did not win a championship. On a good note, however, 1979-1980 was the first year that the NBA instituted the three-point shot. And he had one interesting statistic in his favor. In that year, he attempted 15 three-point field goal attempts and made 10 of them for a 67% career three-point percentage. I mean, yeah, he only took 15 of them, but still, he made 10 of them. That's still pretty impressive to me. For the next few years, Maravich was pretty much a recluse, had spiritual renewal, got into yoga, I think he became a vegetarian, and I think he got into Christianity, became a born-again Christian by the mid-1980s. In 1987, Pete Maravich was inducted into the Vegas Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. And at this time, Pete Maravich was only 40 years old. Many people thought maybe he would get into coaching eventually. So it came as a complete shock when on January 5th, 1988, Pete Maravich dropped dead of a heart attack after playing a pickup basketball game. He was only 40 years old, and the autopsy showed that he died as a result of being born with a congenital defect of having only one coronary artery, which had been compensating for all these times, even all these years of playing basketball. He had shown no signs of, obvious signs at least, of heart disease or heart problems. Although I have Pete Maravich ranked 10th all time, I will admit that I think that he's a superior basketball talent to many of these guys that are on this list. Overall, he's a superior he was a superior player to some of these guys. The reason why I have some of these guys ranked over him is because of overall production. While they may not have been the basketball talents that Pete Maravich was as a whole, their overall production, and they're being fortunate to play for a much longer period of time with a higher production, warrants them being ranked higher, if you get what I'm saying. For his career, Pete Maravich averaged 24.2 points, 4.2 rebounds, and 5.4 assists, on about 44% shooting from the field, which is a little bit on the low side, and was 82% career foul shooter. He scored 50 points or more 6 times. He was a 5-time NBA All-Star, 2 times was All-NBA First Team, 2 times the All-NBA Second Team. I mentioned earlier the All-Rookie First Team that he was on in 1971. And his number 7 was retired by the New Orleans Hornets, Pelicans, I hate that name, and the Utah Jazz. In 1996, he was selected as one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history. My 10th greatest shooting guard of all time, Pistol Pete Maravich.